Hi friends, I'm Carol Keller, an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Illinois in the United States, and today I have a fun fold card for you. It's called an origami shirt card. When you look at it, it will make a big impact and it looks difficult. And I won't say it's difficult, but it does just take a bunch of steps. If you follow the steps, I think it's easy, but it's not your typical card, which I like, and it is definitely fun. So let's get started. Here we go. Here is the card I have for you today. Isn't it fun? And it fits in a standard envelope, so that's wonderful. Here's how it opens. So it may be a card you want to give to someone in person, just so you can show them how it opens. And then the sentiment comes out here. Isn't that cute? So I'm going to show you how to make it. Like I said, it takes a few steps, but it's not hard. It's just following the pattern. So let's put it aside and get started. So we are not starting with a traditional card base at all. We're starting with a piece of designer series paper that's 6 inches by 10 inches or 15.2 centimeters by 25 centimeters. And the first thing we're going to do is score it. One thing to note, this is not directional. I can use it either way. If you do have a directional piece of paper, you might want to start by making a card that's not directional first, just because it's a little easier. You don't have to worry about the direction. If you want to go for it, then do. And I will talk a little bit about direction, but mostly I won't because mine is not directional. So I'm going to bring in my trimmer. And we're going to get the cutting blade out of the way because we're going to score. And so my pattern is going to be facing down. So this is the one I want to use. So I'm going to face it down. And we're going to score at 1.5 inches and 4.5. So I know 1.5 is right to the end of my trimmer. And so I can either measure, this is 4.5 on this side, and I can measure again at 1.5 here, or if it's easier, just flip it around and do it at 1.5 again. It's the same result either way. And I should say in centimeters, that's 3.8 centimeters and 11.4. So like I said, it's the same either way. If you do it at the edge here, that's at 4.5, and then you could slide it down to 1.5. But to me, it's harder to hold the paper since I know it's 1.5 to the edge and it's 1.5 on each side. I just do one, flip it over, and do the other. So hopefully that makes sense. We're going to move the trimmer right now, but we're going to keep it handy. So again, the outside pattern, we're going to face it down. The pattern that I want to show is down facing the table. And we're going to fold it in on those score lines we just made, like this. And you may have a tiny bit of overlap. I know I did. Yeah, there's a tiny bit of overlap. I had that on the first one I made. It didn't seem to matter. There were just a couple times when I needed to kind of move one side out of the way, one side or the other, but it wasn't that big a deal. And we're going to burnish both sides. All right, now we're going to create the shirt sleeves. So if you are using directional, you want it this way, okay? But since I'm not using directional, I'm not going to worry about that too much. We're going to open it back up. And now we're going to do some marking. I'm going to bring in my pencil and my ruler. Or actually, I'm not going to use my ruler. I'm going to use my glass mat for that. And we're going to mark it at 1.25 and 3.25. So I'm going to show you, wait a minute, or did I say 4.25? Hang on. 4 3/4. 1.25, 4 3/4. So I can just pick, here's the 4-inch line. And so I know the solid line is 1 inch and I need 1.25. I'm going to mark it here. This is where I think I am going to flip it around because it is hard to see some of them. And just because I know that dark green, I'm going to flip it this way because for me, it doesn't matter. My paper is not directional. And this way I'll be able to see it better. So 1.25 is right here. And then 4 3/4 is right here. And the reason I know that, like I said, here's the 4-inch line, 1, 2, 3, 4 inches, and then 3/4 of an inch right there, because that would be 5 inches, and this is 6 inches. If that's confusing to you, just use your ruler. And if you're using metric, you mark it at 3.2 centimeters and 12.1 centimeters. And on each side, we're going to mark it at 3 inches or 7.5 centimeters. So again, I have it right on the 4-inch line. So 3 inches is 7. I'm just going to make sure it's right on that line. And like I said, 7 inches. So right there. Same thing on the other side, which means right here. And they are very light. You probably can't see them. That's very purposeful. I know I can see them when I'm scoring, so that's why I did it that way. So now I'm going to bring in my trimmer again. Move that cutting blade out of the way again. And we're going to score between the 2 marks that we made. So let's see here. It's right here and right here. Just like that. Making sure it's where it's supposed to be. And we're going to score. I'm going to flip it around and do the same thing because I know I have a mark right there and right here. So now we have those score lines. And we're going to create the back of the sleeves. So again, this is my front side. So we're going to keep it this way and then fold back like this. And here again, there's a little bit of overlap, but that didn't seem to interfere, like I said. What it did was make it look at first like it was uneven, and then I realized, you know, that I had scored a little unevenly, but then I realized it was just because of the overlap. It wasn't a big deal. Now we're going to flip it around the other way, and we're going to make the collar. And to do that, we're scoring at 3/4 of an inch from the bottom, or 2 centimeters. So I'm putting it here at the 3/4 line, and whoops, we don't want that cutting blade in the way, and scoring. I believe that's the only thing we need the trimmer for. And you're basically just gonna fold it up and burnish it each way, just to make it a little easier to work with. Okay. And then, sorry, I'm making sure now we're gonna fold it to the back side, just like that. And I'm gonna burnish it one more time. So you fold it together. All right, I had a little goof up, so I wanna make sure I tell you the right way. So once we have our flap scored at 3/4 of an inch and burnished, and we have it folded to the back, or we have it folded, I guess, to the front, the solid side with no opening, and then we're gonna turn it back this way because we're gonna end up folding it this way. So now we're gonna burnish it on each side. We're gonna soften the DSP and we're gonna lift it a little bit, okay? So it actually looks more like a collar when you do it, okay? And we know this is kind of the front where the opening is, so if that helps. Now we're going to take these points and we're going to move them to the center with making this point come straight down. So at a 90-degree angle from what it was, okay? So even with this, straight up and down. And then this right toward the flap or the opening. And we're going to do the same thing with the other side, making those points meet up. This one again, straight up and down from the top. And we're going to burnish. Okay, so now we've got our collar. So it's starting to come together. So now we're going to put this aside a little bit. We're going to stamp our greeting. So for that, I have 2 pieces of cardstock. I have this one in cloud cover, and it is 2.5 inches by 3.5 inches, or 6 centimeters by 8 centimeters. And then this is where we're going to stamp our sentiment on a piece of basic white. And this one is 2.25 inches by 3.25 inches, or 5.5 by 7.5 centimeters. I'm going to put that aside for a second because we're going to do our stamping. So I'm going to bring in my Misty Moonlight Ink Pad. And I have a happy birthday stamp that comes from the Unbounded Love stamp set, because I felt like that looked a little more masculine. That's the look I'm going for on this card. Oh, actually, I want to do the candles first before the happy birthday. So I'm going to ink up the candles, and these come from the Sweet Jar stamp set. So we're going to do the candles in the corner, just like this. And then we're going to put this aside for a minute. We're going to bring in Daffodil Delight and use that for the little flames. And you'll know there's only one right way. So the flame, the larger part is toward the bottom, and that's the only way it's going to match up with the candles. There we go. A little off, but not too bad. We're going to go with that. So that's done. Now we're going to bring in that happy birthday again. Put a little more ink on it. I'm sure it's fine though. And stamp it. I stamped it sideways like that, because, and I didn't do it toward the top because it's going to peek out. So I wanted it toward the bottom. And our stamping is done. So as you can see, very little stamping on this card. We're going to put these together with some seal. And our inside is done. So now what we're going to do is put it here so that it's ready to peek out. Just, you know, and it can be toward the bottom, because now what we're going to do is fold the shirt up. So we don't want it too high that it's going to interfere with the fold. And we're going to fold it up so that the shirt collar, it's tucked under that shirt collar, just like this. Okay, it's a little uneven there. Let's see if we can fix that. The shirt collar is, not the card. Let's see. It's a little better. I don't mind if it's a little crooked, but let's see. Okay, so we're going to tuck that shirt underneath just like that, so that, see where we have our sleeves and we have our collar. And then we're going to finish the fold and burnish that so that it stays closed. And now we're going to embellish with pockets and a tie and some buttons. Okay, let's do the pockets first. For this, I'm going to bring in my mini Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. All right, so I've got my mini, and I'm going to make sure that it's in view of the camera. And I've got my cutting plates. So actually you can see it's not very well used yet. So I'm going to put it this way. Not that it really matters. But this is the important part, because to make the pockets, I have a square from the Stylish Shapes dies. It is a 1-inch square. It is the smallest square in that die set. And we don't want to cut it on all 4 sides. As you can see from the pocket, we only want to cut it on 3 sides, even though you really can't see the middle one. But I cut it on 3 sides. So here's what I did. I cut a piece of DSP, same as obviously the shirt front, and it's 1 inch by 1.25 inches, or 2.5 centimeters by 3 centimeters. And this is how I made these pockets. What you're going to do is put the DSP on the back, and you're going to make sure that it fits in. This is the cutting surface in the middle of where those 2 sets of dots are on each side. So you want it right there. so that it's up against all three edges. And I need to get my washi tape. So I've got a piece of washi tape. I'm going to flip this, or I'm going to put it on the other side so I can still see that it's in place, but I'm going to overlap the paper and the die. And I'm also going to overlap it here. So what you want to do is put your die at the edge of the plate so that this piece at the top doesn't get cut. So it's off the edge of the plate. And you're going to do the same thing with this one. Because if they're outside of the cutting surface, they're not going to get cut. And that's what we want. So let me do this. I'm going to make it even. If you're doing the longer pocket like I'm showing you right now, it doesn't have to be right to the edge, but I just want to illustrate something. So I'm going to put it to the edge. So it's just like that. It's outside of the cutting plates. I'm going to run it through. And what you'll see is that then it's not cut through to that top edge, but we have the stitching lines up until there. So in order to create stitching lines all the way to the top, what you do is you're going to turn this in so the unstitched side is inside that inside of where you cut, but not all the way up to this edge. And you're going to kind of feel, you can feel where the little dots that have been cut already fit in to the die. And when you do that, then you know it's going to be one continuous line. So I hope that makes sense. We're going to put this here. And now we have to make sure that this edge does not go into the machine, because otherwise what's going to happen is it's going to get cut off. So we're going to turn it so this edge is now toward the bottom. I know it sounds complicated. It's not as complicated as it sounds. Promise. We're going to put this toward the bottom. And you can hold it in there. I'm going to see if I can. I don't think it'll matter once the plate is on top. We just want to make sure that this does not overlap, that it's off the edge. Then we're going to do the same thing. Put the plate on so that it also does not overlap that end, and run it through again. Move that right out of the way. And when we take the washi tape off, hopefully it worked. I did have to do it a couple of times before I got the hang of it. But see, you can see if you feel for the little ridges here to meet up with the holes, then it lines up beautifully. All right, so that's one. That's one way of doing it. I did also think, why not just run them through once and make the pocket shorter? So I have two larger ones to use, but I'm also going to make a second smaller one, and I'm going to show you how I did that. And then I'm going to probably use the smaller pockets on this one so you can see the difference, and then decide if it's worth the extra trouble, because this is a little extra trouble to line everything up. This will be a little easier. So to do this one, I have a piece that's 1 inch by about 7/8 of an inch. Let me make sure that that is the shorter side. It is. And then this is easier, because all you're going to do is feed it in so that 3 of the sides match up. And it doesn't overlap this side. We're still going to keep it in place because we want to make sure those stitching lines come out on both sides. But now you can run the whole thing through because you don't have to worry about hitting that blade. It's not long enough to do that. So down it goes. We're going to bring in the machine one more time. Don't have to worry about putting it at the end. And we're just going to run it through. And so what we end up with is 2 smaller pockets. I didn't measure this one, I just cut it down. They're a little bit different. Okay, I think I'm gonna do this one more time, but I'll do it off camera. This has a nice little ridge on the bottom, as do these and these, to make it look more like stitching on a pocket. This is a little close, so I'm gonna do that one more time and I'm gonna be right back. All right, so I'm back, and this one is definitely better because you can see that nice little clean edge, where this one, I don't know, it just looks more like a pocket. That's the best I can say. All right, so now we have our choice. We can use the smaller pockets or the longer ones. Since you see what the longer ones look like, I'm gonna move those aside so I can use those on a 3rd card. And then we're gonna put the pockets up here. And in the meantime, we're gonna adhere them in a minute, but in the meantime, we're gonna make the tie. I apologize if there's not continuity in the video. So I made a mistake again, and I don't want to confuse you, so it's easier to just start over again and show you. I'm bringing in a scrap of paper because we're gonna I made a template for the tie. That way, if you do more than one card, you have this to use on all the cards. And I'm gonna show you how I made it. So you need a piece of paper that's at least 4 inches long, 4.5. This one's 5.5, so I know it's long enough. I'm going to line this up so I know it's straight, and then toward the top, I'm just going to make a mark that's 1/4 inch long. And toward the center, it's just easier if you do it that way, and then you know you have enough room. So I need 1/4 inch mark right there. Now I'm going to make a line that's 3.5 inches long. So again, I want to make sure that this is, well, I'm going to line it up this way. It's easier to see. I'm going to make sure that it's straight in the grid. And it's halfway. I'm going to move this so it's about halfway between those 2 lines. And that way I know it'll all be square in the end. So 3.5 inches is there. It's off a little bit. Maybe we'll just extend it a little bit. It doesn't matter if it's a little bigger. It's still going to fit in the space. But what you want is it to be even on each side. I'd say that looks pretty good. Now, 1/4 inch from the bottom of this. So we're going to mark it. Sorry, whoops for that loud noise. We're going to mark the 1/4 inch. Just because it's easier. Right there. We're going to make a line that's 1 inch long. So I'm just going to center it. Same thing. I'm trying to keep it pretty straight. So I need 1 inch. I have it on the 1/2 inch mark. There's my inch. We are going to draw a line on each side. From the top line to the bottom line, same thing here. And then we're going to draw a line down at the bottom, connecting the 2 ends to that midpoint. And then here. Slate's got to be a little bit down. Like that. All right, I think that's pretty good. I'm going to cut out most of this with my trimmer, or at least the 2 long sides, I guess, because then you know that they're even. You might even want to do this on white cardstock, especially if you're going to use it multiple times. So that again, you know it's straight. All right, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm looking for my line in the channel to make it straight. And then this one. Actually, I'm going to use my, well, I guess it doesn't matter. I'll use my trimmer since it's here. And then I'll use my snips for the 2 lines at the bottom. And there's my template. This line that you see here is because I goofed it up in the beginning, so they're the same. So it doesn't matter which one, they're identical. And then what I did now is I have another piece of DSP, and I'm using, I liked the blue in here, so I want that stripe to be in the center. So I'm just gonna line my template up. Here, we'll do it this way since I used the bottom part and snipped, as you can see. So I'm making sure that the point is between those 2 pieces of, 2 strips of cloud cover, like this. And you can see it's also between the 2 pieces, the two yellow pieces, making sure it's in the middle at the top. And I'm actually drawing a line on this side that I'm going to cut right in the middle of. And the reason I'm doing that is that the other side, which I'll show you in a minute, is very dark. Normally I would cut on the other side, or make the lines on the other side, but if I do that, I'm not going to be able to see them. So we are going to use the outside. So, and I don't need these anymore. But I'll show you, see how dark that is? I would not easily be able to, you could maybe see them, but it would be a little harder. So it was easier to just do it this way. So then I'm gonna cut that out. Same thing, I'm gonna pull in my trimmer because I want it to be nice and straight. And find my lines in here. And hopefully make them disappear. Yep, pretty good on that side. And then the same thing on this side. So yeah, you can't see them at all. And I'm going to use my snips for the rest. Snip off the top. And then the 2 sides just above where the pencil lines are. And of course I can always go back if there are pencil lines, like right here, and erase them. If you're like me and you're a perfectionist, whoops. And we'll make sure those lines are gone. And there's our tie, and there's kind of a little bit of a line at the top, but it's not going to matter because that's going to be covered up. So these are just scraps. And then you need a piece for the knot in the tie. We need a strip that's 3/8 of an inch by 3/4 of an inch. And I wanted a little bit of the blue to show. So I'm going to need another piece of my DSP for that. And I have a scrap from the first tie. So this is what I used. It's 3/8 of an inch wide, and by 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to get my trimmer for that. It's really hard to hold it straight in here. Let's try that again. And now we have the knot part of our tie. All I'm going to do is wrap this around. So I'm going to wrap it around like this to the back. And I'm going to use a glue dot right at the top to hold it in place. So right at the top back of the tie, we're going to put a glue dot. And then slide that in again, or maybe actually I'll open it, might be easier, and fold it to the back. So there's our tie, all done. So now we're going to finish assembly. Let's see, I'm thinking about there. I'm gonna grab my seal. And we'll put some on the back of the pockets. I'm kind of estimating where they're gonna go. And I did, when I did the first one, line up the stripes. So that was partly why they were where they were. Maybe about like this. Or I could see if they fit, it fits better on the other side. Let's see. Oh, I think it might. Well, it's too close to the edge there. But this way might work. Put some seal on here. And my pockets are slightly different sizes. And this one seems, the color seems a little off, but we're gonna go with it. Let's see, is that too? Yeah, it might be. Let's see. There must be some color variation in the DSP. And so that's why we see it here. But I'm gonna finish it anyway. I may redo that pocket, but that's okay. What I really wanna do is just show you how to get it assembled. So, because we want it to have an even border on both sides. So we'll do that for now, because I am gonna change that out, I think. And then the tie goes in between. And this is kind of nice because it maybe will show a little bit of the stitching on the pocket. But we also want it so it's up underneath the collar. It's got to fit up like that. So it's right at the top because that's where the tie would go. And I'm going to put some seal. I'm just going to leave it off the top. And which is why that glue dot on the knot is so important. So I'm going to go a little way down and put my seal. I'm going to fit it right up so it sits underneath like that. And we want to make sure it's straight. Yeah, that's pretty good. And so there's our tie and there's our card, except for the buttons. And I will say too, you can do, I forgot to say this before, you can do the tie and not the pockets. You can do the pockets and not the tie. I decided to do both because I wanted to show you both, but you don't necessarily need both. So if you're having trouble with one of the elements, just eliminate it. All right, for the buttons, I'm using the Basic Gray and Smoky Slate Pearls. I'm gonna grab my Take Your Pick tool, and I use the Smoky Slate, the smaller ones. And just put a couple. I know normally we would do 3, but I felt like that would be too crowded and I didn't want to just do 1. So I really wanted to give the sense that they're buttons, so that's what I did. And again, kind of by the point of the tie there. And that is it. So yes, it is a little tedious. Learn from my mistakes. That's why I have the video, because I actually was part of a tutorial. So I made the shirt as part of a tutorial where a bunch of us made shirts from different DSPs. And again, like I said, some with ties, some without, some with pockets, some without. So you, if you place an order from me this month, I will give you the tutorial for free. And obviously then you have the video to follow along too, because I think that makes it a little easier. But that is the shirt. I'm going to move it aside here because I want to show you what I used. So here was the Unbounded Love stamp set. That's completely all sentiments, and I used the Happy Birthday because I felt like that was a good font. I also used the Sweet Jar stamp set for the candles and the flames. And that was it for the stamping. I also used the Stylish Shapes dies. Again, the smallest one is 1 inch square. That's what I used for the pockets. but if you don't do the pockets, then you don't need those. For the tie, I use the Boho Vibes 6x6 DSP. So that's the one obviously I use for the tie, but this is what they all look like. And the other side. And for the shirt, I use the Florals in Bloom DSP. This one obviously is 12 by 12. Oops. And then the other side. So, and there's obviously the one I used for the shirt. And the other thing that I did, which I didn't show on camera, was I used the DSP to make a flap for the envelope. I'm very big on not having naked envelopes, so I used that, and I think that makes it coordinate nicely. But that is it. That is today's card. I hope you like it. I hope you're not too intimidated. Let me know if you think the smaller pockets or the bigger pockets work. What do you think proportion-wise? I kind of feel like the smaller ones work a little better, and they're easier to make, which is nice. And like I said, I'm going to trade out that one, but I was pretty happy with the smaller size. That makes it easier to not have to finagle toward the end of your Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, but honestly, it's not that hard. It's just making sure to be aware of which side you want not cut. Anyway, personal preference. But while you're here, check out my other videos. I have lots of card videos, scrapbook pages, home decor items, tips and techniques, beginner videos, a lot there that I hope you find useful. Please leave me some love in the comments. Subscribe to my channel and click on the bell. You'll be notified when I post new videos, which I do about weekly now. I've really ramped them up, so there are a lot there. And I will see you again soon. Take care, everyone. Happy stamping.